Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Book Clue Podcast. I am your host, Winnie. Come on down, take a seat, pull up to the bar and just relax. Would you like something to drink? Today we are going to go ahead and talk about something that I haven't talked about in a long time. Woo! It has been a long time. So I've talked about interracial dating. What's going on? Kim, Rohan, Tamai, Christopher, Brandy. What is up, everybody? So, today's episode. Interracial dating. Now, if you don't remember, I used to write about that all the time. That's sort of how I started off at first. I started to write about, interracial dating on WordPress. And I did that for, 3 or 4 years or something? But then I ended up stopping because, I'm my wife. So it's like, there goes that. What's the point of writing about dating if I'm already found someone? But anyways, I know that maybe you haven't. Maybe you haven't found somebody. Maybe you're still looking for that special somebody. And maybe that special somebody is, you might be of a different race. And I'm not trying to say that anybody here is has a fetish or anything like that, but I'm trying to give you some practical advice, non-problematic practical advice, non-problematic practical dating advice. All right, so let's get into it. Who else is here? Anastasia Kailash. Ooh, that's a sick ass name. Cash. That's a sick name too. What's going on? Joe, Chris, Ebony, Mia, Tiffany, everybody. We have 60 people in here. Okay, let's go start. The first piece of advice that I'd have to say is to go where you're wanted. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people of color, they'll try to do the whole interracial dating scene, right? But they'll they'll go to spaces that just aren't very friendly for people of color in general. You know what I mean? It's like they'll try you'll have an Asian dude trying to or an Asian girl, whoever, trying to date someone from a super white fraternity, because I'm getting the Stanford experience, and so I want some Stanford white ass. But there are certain spaces that I think are more conducive to you, not only just as a person of color, but just your own interest. And I think that oftentimes we're so used to defaulting to the spaces that we're already in. So it's okay, well, I'm at work, I'm just gonna see who I can date at work, or I'm just taking science classes, and I'm gonna see I'm gonna go check to see the science classes. But it's if you're always stuck in just these few social spheres, then you're always going to run into the same personalities, because there's a certain personality that goes to your company. There's a certain personality that works in your department. There's a certain personality that just goes to your major. And I know that there's differences, right? Yeah, there's differences. But if you're someone who is experiencing difficulty dating, then you know that oftentimes what you need is just sort of a change of pace. And so I encourage a lot of people to venture outside of their comfort zone and take a look at other communities that, or actually instead of, well, I wouldn't say necessarily out of your comfort zone, but just try something different, but something that's still you, all right? So explore all the different parts of your personality. Okay, like take all right. So when I was single and I was like looking around, right? I went to school, I went to work, but that's it. I couldn't really find anyone at school. I tried dating around, but didn't really work out. And at work, like I worked with a couple of people, and they're like older people, so I couldn't date my coworkers. So I had to go into other social circles. I took up a salsa dancing class because I wanted to learn something new. I figured, oh, it's a free class, and I get to dance with other people, other random people, and it's just a new social circle. I'm not going to get in there thinking that anything's going to happen, but I just want to be able to expose myself because you never know. Like, oftentimes people think that you go into these social environments and you're supposed to find the person like right there. But keep in mind that so many relationships are formed not necessarily out of a first connection, but sometimes by a second or a third connection. So you might meet somebody in salsa class, or you might take up Zumba or whatever, right? And you'll meet someone and they'll just become your friend. They're just like your friend. But then they have a really cute brother, or they have a uh, really sweet cousin. So be open to different groups, not only just for a dating sense, but also to be able to explore your own personality. I think a big problem is we're oftentimes so used to we're so used to just sticking to like we think that our dating sphere is only as close as our own existing interests. You know what I mean? So it's like if you feel like, oh well, I'm a gamer and you know, I like trying out new restaurants. You feel like that is your only social sphere, but like also know that there are other parts of your personality. Like you're not just a gamer, but you also might be someone who could potentially be into boxing, or you might be someone who could potentially be into I don't know any other community, right? And so take a look at groups on Facebook. To be honest, I think that social media groups, in particular Facebook groups, are very underlooked. And I know I've said it a bajillion times. I met my wife on a Facebook group, and Facebook groups now are even better. So before it was like Facebook groups were lucky if they had like 300 people. Like 300 people was a lot of people. Nowadays, you see Facebook groups with hundreds of thousands of people. And now you can join multiple groups based off of multiple interests. Like, dude, I'm part of a group that's about Stardew Valley. Like we share pictures of us playing Stardew Valley. And so when you look into Facebook groups, you know, even something like Stardew Valley, right? It's like you could bond with someone off of that. You're like, oh, hey, we both play the same game. Hey, like, how did you build up your character in your life? Oh, blah, 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 blah. I did this. Oh, shit. Really? Me too. I picked that side of town. Blah, blah, blah. And so you already have an entryway into the conversation. You don't have to worry about like coming up with a pickup line or coming up with like some sort of like, oh, like how do I slide into the DMs? Like no, like you're already in that proximity, right? And so obviously, like, I'm not saying that you need to go into these interest groups just thinking that, oh, I'm going to treat it like a dating group. But again, like I said before, like go into it planning to meet friends. And again, like I think that's probably the healthiest way if you really want to like date around is just like go with the intention of just I'm going to make a lot of friends. I just want to meet people. Like I just want to meet people. Like I noticed that those are the people who are the most successful when it comes to dating. Like they aren't the type to go, oh well, I'm on this app or blah blah blah. Like no, like these are the people who are just like, oh, I just want to meet people. I want to hear people's stories. I want to like meet people at the mall. I want to meet people at work. I just want to meet your friends. Like those types of people who are just like they don't have expectations. You know, and they go into it naked thinking that I'll be a good person and I'll put my best foot forward. And if something happens out of one of these potential friendships, then it does. So aside from Facebook groups, go to gaming communities. There are so many different conventions. There are so many different, like, whether you're into LARPing or whether you're into cosplay. Again, take a look at the different interest groups because when it comes to interracial dating, oftentimes we try to we think that if we have a hard time dating like Asian people, right? Like, oh, I'm Asian, I can't date Asian girls or whatever. Like, we think that the solution lies within dating someone of another race because we think that it's just going to like erase all those things. Well, it doesn't. It's like if you're Asian and you're into trashy Asian guys, chances are if you date another race, you're going to be into a trashy version of those guys. So it's like your taste ports over. Like when I suggest interracial dating to people, it's not necessarily a matter of I think that dating someone of another race will solve the problem. I just think that it will expand your dating pool. All right? Because if you're in a city with 100 people and you're Asian and there's only 20 Asian people, then it's like, okay, well, you're already limiting yourself to this dating pool of 20 people out of 100. And now, well, if you're straight, then it's like, okay, well, then half of those people, 10 people, and out of those 10 people, how many of them are you actually compatible with? So it's like the whole dating pool is a lot larger than just those 10 people. But because you're so picky about your particular race, you've limited the odds of you being able to find someone. So that's usually why I recommend interracial dating. It's not a matter of, oh, I want to find an Asian guy because he has this or blah, blah, blah. It's not about that, right? You're not like hunting for stereotypes that you want to like see if they're true or not true or whatever. Like I said, it's about finding someone. It's just about finding someone. It's about like everybody deserves to find a companion. Everybody deserves to have someone that they love. And I think that if you are putting yourself in a situation where you're like, for some moral or ethical reason or whatever, you're like, oh, I'm only going to date this race. Hey, look, that's fine. That's cool. Like, I get it, right? And I know that a lot of people, especially a lot of women, are like demonized for wanting to date interracially. But like I said, at the end of the day, like, find your person. People are going to talk shit. People are going to talk shit regardless. People are going to talk shit regardless. Whether you're dating someone in your race or whether you're dating someone outside your race. Like I said, you deserve to find somebody. Let's see. So my second piece of advice. So again, my first piece of advice is to go to where you are wanted. So try to find interest groups that you can connect with. Because again, I think a lot of times when we do interracial dating, we think, oh well, if I'm dating Asian guys, like, do I go to the library? Like honestly, I can't tell you how many times non-Asian women have asked me like, oh, where do I go to find Asian guys? Like, the school, the library, like, and they think that that's where Asian guys live. Like that's the only place that like we exist. Like we don't go to the bar or we don't, you know what I mean? So again, don't follow, like don't go, if you're looking for Asian guys, don't go hunting for Asian events and shit like that. Just like do shit that you're normally interested in. All right? And you know, if you find something, you find something. Let's see. All right, tip number 2. So market yourself. Okay, now this is kind of a, like this might be a little bit of a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, and it definitely was for me. You have to know how you are perceived. Like you have to be totally honest with yourself and say, and look at the mirror and say, okay, based off of how I look, based off of my race, what are people going to look at? Or what are people going to see when they look at me? Like, what is the stereotype that they are seeing when they look at me? When I first started college, I thought that, you know, like it was time for me to like change my image. Before I was kind of just like a nerdy, just kind of a whatever Asian dude, you know, like a basic Bay Area Asian dude, you know? At the end of the day, I still am, but I'm good at hiding it, man. No, like I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, you know, this is how I'm being perceived as. Whether I'm confident or not, people are going to see me as like this shy Asian guy. They're going to see me and they're going to think that I'm unassuming or whatever, right? And so ask yourself, like, how are people perceiving you? Like, how are like in the best and in the worst case, like, how are people like racializing you? You know, and think about like, you know, be cognizant of how do you think that that might affect your dating experiences. Because you know the unfortunate reality is like no matter how much we talk about your identity as a person of color and how you know you need to be happy with how you look and how you feel and blah 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 blah, the honest truth, the honest truth is the rest of society still hasn't been brought up to pace with that. Like we might feel beautiful in our skin and we might feel confident in our ethnic features, but the rest of the world might still treat it like that doesn't matter. Like, oh, well, I don't really care if you feel like happy or whatever. Like what I'm trying to say is like, despite our best intentions and the world that we want to live in, unfortunately, like people are still going to fucking racialize us. People are still going to be fucking racist to us, right? And I guess I say that it's important to understand that because again, there might be certain social circles that based off of like who your personality is or what your personality is, like it just might not be a good fit because people are just like they'll treat you a certain way. Like if you're one of these nerdy Asian guys, right? Like, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But if you're one of those nerdy Asian guys and you're going into these spaces where like it's a very Western space and everyone's sort of like, you know, they're talking about this whole alpha male, beta male shit. Like when you're in that particular environment, you know that when it comes time to you being racialized and how you're going to be judged in that space, it's always going to lean to the negative. So that's what I mean by like understanding exactly who you are and knowing how to like let's say you are the Asian guy, right? And you want to be in that space. You want to be in that area where you're dating white girl cheerleaders or you know, all the sorority chicks, whatever, right? Like you have to know, okay, well, I am perceived as this, and if I want to get to that point, then I need to do X, Y, Z, you know? I know that sounds kind of problematic, but the reality is a lot of people do that. You know, a lot of Asian guys will go to these Ivy Leagues and they want to have that experience, and that's where you see a lot of racist Asian dudes because like they're trying to like fit into that culture. Um, and I'd say so when it comes to marketing yourself, all right, like one of the ways that I thought about it, right? So okay, so I'm marketing myself, um, and I am in these AMXF spaces where it's a bunch of Asian guys, and there are a lot of white women, there are a lot of black women, there are a lot of Latino women. Okay, so when I was single in that space, the way that I thought about it was there are a lot of Asian guys here, and a lot of the Asian guys are like sort of the nerdy guys, and there are a lot of Asian guys that are sort of like the, you know, I'm the hip hop Asian guy, right? And so that was uh, that was the dating pool, okay? And I knew that I was not like any of those two guys, all right? So I knew that the perception of me and the image of me in that dating space was like people might be confused about it. Like, oh, like, you know, uh, is he one of the nerdy guys? Is he one of the, you know, not nerdy guys? Um, and so I had to essentially like really think about it and sort of develop my own sense of style and, you know, my own sort of identity that would be able to be easily understood. Because the truth is, like, there are a lot of like when it comes to dating online, especially where it's super super fast and you know you're being judged just based off of your profile picture. You know, like who like how what your profile picture is can determine your success, how your page is, and how you present yourself. Right. So like the way that I marketed myself was I'm not, you know, a hip hop Asian dude. I'm not a nerdy Asian guy. I'm I'm more of the artsy Asian guy, right? Like I'm more of the Asian guy who is like I'm not good at school and I'm kind of just chill and laid back, but I'm very confident. And so that I felt was my sort of character, all right? And and you can see this. I know it's kind of a weird way to explain this, but if you look at like shows like The Bachelor, right? I know this is again, I know it's so super weird. As horrible of a show as it is, one thing that they do really good, and the one thing that they're really good at portraying, are these character archetypes. So in the show, there's always like the villain, or there's like the young weird girl, or there's the there's the Asian one and the black one. And so, like I said, like figure out like what is your character, and figure out like how are people looking at you? Like are people going to look at you like the angry black woman? Are people going to look at you like you are the black woman who is like the all natural black woman? Are they going to look at you like the Black Lives Matter black woman? Are they going to look at you like the, you know, like there's different quote images, there's different quote stereotype or these quote types. You know what I mean? And so like what is your type? Like if you're in this pool, like who is your character? What is your thing? Luckily, at the time, also when I was in those dating groups, I had my page, and so that was also my thing. It's like I'm the artsy guy who has a page, and I write about dating, and I give advice, you know, and so that was my angle, and you know, it's sort of a process of like sticking your neck out, you know, and again, it's not even about like faking it. You don't have to fake anything about yourself, but just like it's more about like, you know, I want people to know that I am this type, so I want to just present myself in this particular way in this space. Um, and another thing is to be cognizant of um, what the current media is saying about your people. Like, I know this is kind of bizarre. Um, so one of the ways that I mobilized interest and I started to funnel people sort of in my um, funnel people into sort of my dating sphere and get people to like I guess uh, at least not necessarily I guess notice me notice me somebody um, was I was hyper aware of the fact that K-pop was coming up, and I was aware that a lot of people were like a lot of women were just barely starting to get into K-pop and get into Asian guys, right? And so like I knew that coming in, all right? And like there were times where I played it up. Like not like played it up, but I was just like um I I took elements of that K-pop aesthetic and I would sometimes feed into that because if I knew that someone would be interested in it, then like it again, it's if you think about it from a marketing perspective, I know it sounds weird, but at the end of the day, like if you are looking to date somebody, if you think of yourself as a product and they are a product and like you both have to match, you both have to have this business agreement, you need to reveal certain attributes. You need to have some sort of sign or thing to like, have people draw attention to you somehow. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that a lot of single people have is that they just don't know how to draw attention to them, like in a positive way, um, and sometimes it could be a tiny thing, but I think a lot of people are sort of this mindset that it's like, oh, I'm single, just I'm a nice person. I go to work, I go to school, and, just sometimes I go to the bar and just I sit, I sit at the edge and just if someone wants to come up to me, then they come up to me. But I don't really date around too much. Those people, and I'm sure a lot of you are probably those people. Um, but if you are those people and you are having trouble dating, um, then maybe you have to consider how you're marketing yourself. Maybe you have to go through a style makeover. Maybe you have, and that's the thing that like that's a hard pill to swallow because on one hand you want to be like, oh, I'm accepting of myself, this is me, blah 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 blah, but at the same time, just because you change an outfit, just because you embellish some of your sentences or whatever, doesn't mean you're not you. It's still you. Like there's a line where you'll cross where you're like, okay, all right, like this is once you start getting face tattoos, trying to pretend to be another person, like, okay, that is when you're not being you. But like, there's there is a quote version of you that is embellished. It's kind of like when if you work in retail and you have that retail voice. Oh, hi, welcome. Can I help you find anything today? Well, we actually just came out with a new line of sweaters. It's really great. My Aunt Nana, she bought two of them. Thank you for coming to J. Crew. You know what I mean? Like you can it's sort of like a code switch, but like a personality. Like how Yvette, um I'm trying really hard to follow you, but it's starting to sound like you were saying that people should pretend to be something that they're not just to date. No, of course not. Again, you can keep the dignity of saying that, oh, I'm going to be myself, I'm just going to be me. Yeah, again, there's no problem with that. You can date however you want to date. But I'm just saying that if people are having a hard time meeting people in general, look, we all a lot of single people have this vision of being found. This vision of, oh, I would love it if I just like bumped into somebody. Oh, I would love it if like, my instructor just happened to be hot. Like, you can hope for that and you can bank on that. But if you're talking about someone being romantically interested enough to want to like be with you, and you're banking on the probability of a chance encounter, good luck. Again, people are out here on fucking dating apps swiping. So a lot of people, again, they're out and open. It's not a matter of, um, yeah, it's not a matter of changing yourself. It's more a matter of just leaning into a side of yourself. Like, um, my, whatchamacallit, um, it's kind of like when people, they they take on certain things like, skateboarding, like, oh, that was your thing, right? But it's not necessarily you were a skateboarder, but it was just a thing that you sort of did, and it gave you entrance into certain social circles or whatever. Like, what I mean is interests and fashion and all those things, like, it's still you. Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, just do it within reason. Just do it within reason. Oh, and so the third one is, I'd advise you to have a story to tell. Now, this sort of goes in line with being able to market yourself. When I was single, I joined college, I was like, okay, I've been living in my room for the last 3 years, and I'm coming into college for the first time, and I am not interesting. I'm interested in fashion, and I'm interested in video games, and I post blogs on WordPress. What is anyone going to see in me? Like, am I a catch? So I realized that I had to work on myself. I had to build up certain aspects of myself. So a couple of things I did were, I started to write. I started to write a lot. That was part of my identity. Like, it was just sort of these different hobbies. I started writing a lot. I started writing on WordPress. Okay, so part of my identity is as a writer. And then I started to go to restaurants and review them on Yelp. And then I was a food reviewer. And then I started going to all these restaurants, and I was like, hey, a lot of these places suck. And I could probably cook these foods better than the chefs. So I tried to learn how to cook. And so I became an aspiring home cook. Then I realized, I need to get in shape. But I'm like too nervous to go to a gym. Let me go take salsa dancing. So I took dancing. I went to a free class. I analyzed my style, and I was like, hey, I don't really like the way that I dress. I think it's time to freshen it up. I'm really into the 60s style. I love the show Mad Men. I don't know. Let me see if I can work this shit. I worked it into sort of my my style. And so I looked at all the things that I had, and I was like, okay, like, I can see these are all the things that I'm interested in. These are all the things that I'm legitimately doing, and I think that they're fun. Like, how is this, like what is my story? Do I look like a guy who has ambitions? Am I going somewhere? Like, and again, it also goes back to knowing how you're perceived. All right, so I'm an Asian guy who is a food reviewer, and I take salsa dancing. Oh, okay, so, like, maybe that will offset this stereotype that Asian guys are shy. Because look, I'm out and about, I'm dancing, I write, I'm cultured, right? I'm interested in other cultures. And so my story that I was trying to tell with my life when it comes to dating was, I'm a man of many interests, and I'm a man who is trying to work on himself. I'm a man who is learning. I'm a man who is trying to build this thing on social media. And it was funny because I talked to my wife the other day and I asked her a question. I was like, "Hey babe, when you got with me, like what was it about me that you really liked? Like in terms of like personality traits, you know? Like what did you think I had that other guys didn't have?" And she said that you were really young, but you seemed like you knew how to like have your life in order. Like you were working on things. And for someone who was 21, like that was really admirable. And my wife at the time was 19, and so she saw it as like, oh, well, this guy has a story to tell. This guy has something going on. And so like he has a story. How do I fit into that story? Like do like you know what I mean? And and that's what I mean by the power of a story and the power of like having this life that like again, it's authentic to yourself, but it's also a life that you think from the outside someone would want to participate in. Because like there are some people who again, and it's no fault to themselves. I'm just purely speaking from a like a dating strategy perspective. Like this is why you aren't being seen. This is why your name isn't out there in the dating market, right? The reality is a lot of people there's just nothing tangible in terms of like what you can see or a life that like they have. And again, like sometimes it's a matter of like people uh, being insulated and they don't really, you know, put themselves out there. But again, like if you feel horrible and shitty about your life, and if you feel like your life isn't going anywhere, then how do you think people who, when it comes to dating, how are they going to perceive that? And I'm not trying to say that like I know it sounds really really depressing, right? It sounds like okay, well if you're suffering through certain things, and oh well, too bad, then you know you're not going to find anybody. But in a lot of ways, that's kind of what it is, and I think that's a good thing. Like if you are in a place where your mental health isn't in the best state, then maybe you need to have a relationship with yourself. Maybe you need to work on yourself. And I think a lot of times people, you know, get anxious and they start worrying like, oh man, I need to find someone. Oh gosh, like I'm worthless, blah, blah, blah. Like if I found someone, like I, you know, like life would bring, life would have meaning. But it's the opposite. You need to bring meaning to your life, and and your meaningful life will attract somebody else. Because like again, so many people try to do it the other way around. So many people try to think that like, oh, I'll attract somebody and then my life will get better. Like, no, you have to work on yourself. You have to work on your career. You have to work on your school. You have to work on, you know, work on your mental health. You have to work on your patience, and you have to work on the fact that you're a very hard person to talk to. You know, fix all these things. Make sure that like, you know, you have a life that someone would want to be a part of. Um, and you know, my my motto back then was interested is interesting. All right, interested is interesting. You know, so when it comes to having a story to tell, think about it like this. Okay, you have you meet two people, right? So from the looks of it, it seems like there's a lot of women here. Let's say there's two men. All right, there's two men. You, I don't know, like shit. You went to some conference and you got seated at a table with these two other men, right? And you know they're in your industry, so you don't really need to talk about them too much because you know what they do. Like they do the same shit that you do. But let's say that one man says that you know he goes to work, he Goes home, he watches Game of Thrones. He has a dog, and that's it. All right? That's bachelor number 1. And the bachelor number 2 has the same life. But his story is, I'm part of this Game of Thrones cosplay group, and we meet up every 6 months. We plan events. Yeah, I have a dog, and here's my Instagram. Like, I don't know, like I'm taking my dog out, whatever. But like, it's like one person has sort of like both these people are interested in dogs. Both of these people are interested in Game of Thrones, but one person is more interested in their hobby than the other, and that passion comes off, and you can see the way that okay, like this one guy, he was interested in the same show, but he actually took it far enough to like go to events and like do all this shit about it. And he has a dog, but like he like celebrates his dog, like they take pictures on Instagram and like whatever, it's like, so think about the things that you're already interested in. What are you interested in? Are you interested in baking? Are you interested in kickboxing? Are you interested in fucking cannabis? Are you interested in gaming? Think about some of the things that you're sort of like mildly interested in, and see if those are things that you might want to, get more involved in. Interested is interesting. Like the more interested you are in a particular topic, and the deeper you go into it, the more likely you're also to meet other people. Like, I'm really into, like, I've been into MMA, mixed martial arts, for years, since I was like in high school. But I always kind of just like watch the shows and or watch the fights, tuned into them every now and then. But it wasn't until recently that I started to say, you know what, this is something that I've been interested in for a very long time. But I've never really taken a more serious sort of look into it. And so I joined like these Facebook groups, and then I started like talking and commenting and like being involved with the community, and like I met other people, and like now it's like there's a greater sense of fulfillment, and I think that, like, again, the more interested you are in a particular thing, the more interesting you will appear, because you have more things to talk about, and if they're interested in it too, you can relate. So again, working on yourself is the best piece of dating advice, like, ever. It's just working on yourself is the best piece of dating advice. Let's see. Okay, so this is more, all right. This is more, how would I say this? So this is kind of a more strategic racial strategy, or strategic racial strategy. Fucking hell, man. Yeah, so it's like a racial strategy, and it's, I don't know if it. I don't know why in my head it feels problematic, but in my mind I know that, like, no, it's not necessarily problematic. It's just a matter of accepting fucking what it is. Part of the whole having a story to tell thing is knowing how to break stereotypes, and knowing how, like, okay, so this is it was always my little tactic when it came to like dealing with race and certain shit. So as an Asian guy, people would always have certain expectations, all right? They think that I'm nerdy, they think that I'm shy, they think that all these other things, right? And they all come in packages. Remember, like I said before, about knowing how you're being perceived. Okay, if you're perceived as a nerdy Asian guy, if you're perceived as being the you know, the Latino woman with an attitude, but whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that is how you know that people are racializing you, okay? One of the first things that I would always do when I would meet someone who just in case, like especially when it comes to people of different races, and I know this is kind of fucked up, and I shouldn't have had to do this, but it is a reality of fucking online dating, is you reveal something about yourself that is unexpected. That is unexpected for your race, but it doesn't seem like it's reaching. You know? And again, I know it sounds a certain way, but I'm just saying like um, having gone through the dating process and all the annoying like, oh, where are you from? Where are you really from? Blah 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 blah. Oh, you're Asian. Are you interested in like one of the ways that I would cut through all of the bullshit is I would mention something that I do that I felt like other Asian guys didn't do, or a lot of Asian guys didn't do. And one of the ways that I would do that, at least in person, was with the way that I dressed. I took a survey, or not a survey, but I took a look around at my campus when I was in college, and I tried to see like, okay, this is how all the Asian guys are dressing right now. All right, this is my survey. All the Asian guys are dressing up in jeans and college sweaters and fucking polos and just casual college stuff. Okay, well let me go and come to school every single day in a suit. Let me come every single day, fucking like dressed brilliantly and like I'm out of place. Let me look like I'm always overdressed. And obviously I'm not trying to say that you have to do that, but I think that by doing that and by having certain interests that were also like within my scope, but also sort of unconventional, it allowed me to enter certain situations and not have to go through the bullshit of like, oh, you're an Asian guy, blah blah blah. Like it was my way of sort of breaking that stereotype immediately, so they knew, oh, this is someone different. This is something I've never seen before. This is a different look. And I'm not just trying to say that you need to like do something totally unique, like you need to come to fucking school dressed up as Bjork or anything like that. But just survey like what's your demographic? Like if you're trying to date at school, like what do all the dudes dress like? What do all the women dress like? What do all the people who are of your ethnicity dress like? It's like how, like I said before, like how do you stand out? Like how do you market yourself in a way that you look like you present something different? Because it isn't necessarily a matter of like, oh, I don't want to look like all the other Asian people because I think all the other Asian people are bad. It's more a matter of I just want people to show that that there's something different about me. And I want people to be curious about it enough to want to find out. And my fourth piece of whoops, sorry, we got cut off a little bit. My fourth piece of advice is to know your demographic. If you are interested in interracial dating, please, 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 don't embarrass yourself. Just don't embarrass yourself, man. I'm telling you, I have seen it all. And we've all seen it all. We have all seen it all. Like the whole, oh, hi, chocolate woman. Can I slide into your DMs, boo? Or I can't tell you how many times I've gotten fucking messages from like white girls or black girls who are like, fucking ni hao, or or annyeonghaseyo. It's like, dude, like I'm typing in English. Like, look. One time, you listen here, right? If you're listening right now, stop what you're doing and listen to this. Listen to this bullshit. One time, this one lady messaged me in a full paragraph in Korean. And then when I said, "Oh, I'm not Korean. I don't understand this," she kept responding in Korean, and then after a while she like stopped. It was the weirdest. It was the weirdest thing. It was the weirdest thing, and I never spoke to her again. So, know your demographic, and like know it from, um, like, okay, the reality is a lot of you, as open as you are, some of you are looking for a particular race, or you're just like, oh well, I don't know, I'm open to all races, but let me go ahead and date like Latino guys, so I'm going to join a Latino group or whatever. If you're going to do that, prep yourself up and at least just learn about the culture. Like just take a genuine interest. Like don't do. I think the worst thing that you can do is like do one of those like, oh, you know, 5 things that Asian girls like. Like that stuff is, oh my god, that's terrible. Don't ever like do one of those little advice things, because then you're just gonna make yourself look so dumb. Just don't do it. What I would say is take an actual interest in like the history of those people in that space. So, for example, if you are in Australia and you wanted to date Vietnamese guys, it might be interesting just to learn about like the context of Vietnamese people in Australia. Oh, okay, people immigrated there. Blah 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 blah. This is what happened. Oh shit! When that immigration happened, there was a lot of racism. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so you have this background knowledge. So that way, it's like if you meet someone who it's like, oh, hey, look, they told me that their parents are immigrants and that they're Vietnamese, so they must have gone through that like certain shit. So it's like you can prep yourself to being sensitive to certain topics and knowing how to navigate them. So you just don't like, I don't know, make a dumb joke or whatever. It's just like, it's even something as simple as when I hear stories about black women who go on dates with like Asian dudes or white dudes or whatever, and like they try to quote urban it up. It's like, oh hey, they jump into the car like, hey, you want to listen to the new Kanye album, or like, like they try to take him to like a southern restaurant or wherever. It's like they think that because they are dating a black woman that they need to like do all the things that they think only black people. It's just like, that's what I mean by educating yourself. And if you learn that, hey, yes, there are black people who exist who like chicken, or yes, there are black people who exist who like hip hop, but that isn't the only thing that they like, and that is, like it's amazing how you tell certain people like that, and they're floored. They're absolutely surprised that you can just be like, hey, I am dating a black girl. I'm gonna go take her to some bistro. I don't know. We're gonna go to the pub or some shit. And oftentimes when people get into interracial dating, they think that it's like, oh, this culture, I need to like assimilate myself into this culture. It's like, no, 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 no. You're doing it all wrong. If you want my personal opinion, if you want to attract somebody of a particular culture that is not of your own, don't go in there pretending to be a representative of their culture. Go in there knowing that you are a representative of your culture. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're dating a black woman, don't go in there trying to drop knowledge of, oh, I listen to this artist and blah 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 blah. Like don't do that, because then you're gonna get exposed, right? So, oh my god, oh, so many people do this. So many people do this, and it's really surprising that people do this. But no, I think what is a lot more genuine, it's a lot more effective, is if you come in there and you know a lot about your culture and you share. So like the way that I did it was when I met my wife, I introduced her to all the Asian food. Filipino food, how to eat it with your hands. I showed her like going to pho for the first time. I took her to go eat ramen. We did hot pot and Korean barbecue, and it's like I showed her this world of culture that I was comfortable with, that I was sort of an expert in, and I brought her into this side of the world, and she brought me into her world, you know? As opposed to me pretending to be like, oh, I already exist in your community. I totally get you. Like, no, 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 no. Like, come in there knowing that you have differences and connect that way. You know what I mean? So, like, um, Tariq Brown said, what happened? What happened my with my wife? I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. Um, but yeah, like I said, just that's why I'm telling you, like, people of color who know their shit, who know their history, who know their culture, who know about their people, and who like it's it's so much more attractive than someone who pretends to be a tourist for another community. So, um, like I said, know your demographic, know their culture, so you know how to not step on their toes. Know your culture, so you can contribute something, and be cognizant also of how your two cultures historically have clashed or connected. If you are um, Asian, and if you're dating someone who is Western, like, understand how those communication dynamics work. Understand that maybe as an Asian person, uh, you speak very non-verbally, and you give off a lot of hints and cues, and you're very passive aggressive, and you'll say that you're okay, but you're really not okay, or you'll guilt trip people, maybe, like, that's how, because I mean, to be honest, that is how a lot of Eastern cultures, I feel, are like. There's a lot of value in saving face and not embarrassing yourself. And so people will disguise their messages under certain things. They'll be very, very, like, low key about certain things. Whereas in Western cultures, people are a lot more upfront about it. If you don't like something, then you say it. If you don't like something, if you don't like your food, then you raise your hand, and the waiter changes it for you. You know, and so be aware of stuff like that and figure out, like, okay, well, I am Western and my wife is Eastern, all right, and she's more her culture is different. Like, understanding, like, how they feed off of each other, because there's oftentimes a tendency to look at yourself and your culture and the way that you do it as sort of the standard, where you're like, oh, well, my culture, like, this is how we do it. Like, we say face, like, we don't like to be all dramatic and blah, 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 blah. And then you'll look at someone of a Western culture, and I see this a lot, when it comes to, like, Asian people who want to date, like, black people, where they will perceive black people and black culture, or the way that black people speak, as aggressive, and they'll perceive it as, like, threatening, you know when it's not that, it isn't that way. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that they're more threatening or anything like that. It's just that, no, they speak that way and you speak at a different tone or whatever. You know what I mean? And so it's like knowing how to accurately frame and understand their culture relative to yours. So that way you're not constantly, like, in this space where you feel like they are violating your rules constantly. Like, I see this a lot where you'll have black women who will get with Asian guys, and the Asian guy will constantly have a problem with the way that, like, oh, my mom thinks that you're this, or my mom thinks that you're doing that, or my mom doesn't like the way that you're dressing, and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, you can't measure another culture's, like, you can't measure the goodness of another culture using the metrics of your culture. So it's important to know what is important in their culture. What is important, what does that culture consider, quote, slutty? What does that culture consider respectable? What does that culture consider admirable behavior? What are the issues when it comes to those communities? Like, what are the intraracial issues going on in that community? Like, when I got into the AMBW scene, I had to educate myself on the social issues that are going on between black women and black men. Because there's a whole conversation between black women and black men and how they feel about dating each other. And as an Asian guy, you know, dating a black woman, I had to understand that, because I had to understand, okay, well, this is what my wife is going through when she gets a message from some black dude or whatever. So it's like, again, be aware of all of the surrounding issues that are going on. Like, if you're interested in this interracial dating thing, like, do your homework, and don't just like learn about topical shit like, oh, like, Asian guys like it when you know, I make kawaii faces or whatever. Like, again, look into like the social issues involved with that particular race and how they sort of balance off of you. Let's see. And I think that is about it. Shit. All right, let's go ahead and see what kind of comments we have going on. Ebony Thomas said, I see a lot of black women calling Korean men oppa right off the back. I just don't get it. Oh man. Oh man. Yeah, that is embarrassing. It's so ironic because, like, we all know that, like, it's just like, I guess I can't say we all know because, yeah, actually, I guess I can't because Asian guys are pretty bad at this too. So, I think Asian guys and black women, we need to work on that shit. Because Asian guys, I'll see messages about Asian guys messaging black women like, oh, hey, caramel queen or whatever. So yeah, don't, like I said, be an expert in your culture. Don't try to be an expert in their culture. Because, to be honest, it can only go, I feel like most of the time it can only go wrong. Because if they know their own culture and you try to come in, then you might look like a poser. And if they don't know it, they might, and maybe if they're resentful of their culture, then you might look like you're trying too hard. So just don't do it. Just say hello. Oh gosh. Let's see. Christopher said, oh my fucking god, I get that all the time too. The weebs do that shit to me. Kimia Banks said, I agree, fix what you need to, and don't expect a relationship with someone will correct your problems or have them do your emotional labor for you. 100%. 100%. Look, I've been looking into incels recently. Not as like, oh, I'm I'm interested in incels. Like, I want to be a part of that. No, it's more like I'm looking at it as a study to see, like, what are they thinking? Like, what are the devices that are impacting how they feel, and like, why do they want to be involuntary celibates? And it's amazing how many of these incel guys attach the responsibility of their own mental health to women. And they'll be like, I'm depressed, and I'm this, and I'm that, and they'll just go down a laundry list of all the things that are wrong with their life. And they'll be like, at the end of it, oh man, just, if but these fucking thoughts, man, these thoughts just like, they just, they don't want to give me a chance or whatever. Like they'll make it seem as if women not having sex with them or women not giving them a chance is what's stopping them from like crawling out of their hole of depression. And a lot of them are really depressed. And that's because a lot of them are just waiting around for this magical woman to fix their problems. It's like I'm really, as I get older, and I'm not even trying to say this is a cringy thing. As I get older, I start to really fucking get it when a lot of women say that um, like men are babies and that men have to be like taken care of and shit like that. Because look, you know, I've been dealing with depression for a while, and I've had certain realizations in the last few months where I was just like, wow, dude, I've been a difficult person to deal with. Like there's certain things like that my wife has to keep me in check with. And I think it's just like a lot of women have a similar experience where they feel like a guy's, the men that they date, they don't really have their lives in order and they need to be sort of babysat. But oh yeah, anyway, that's a really, really, really random tangent. Um, Desiree said, I agree with knowing social and current issues topics. Definitely educate yourself. No one wants to spend their majority of their relationship teaching you simple things and social aspects. Be honest about your interests. But like you said, do your homework. Exactly. 100%. 100%. Look, in the other episode that we did or in the episode of Lag Live, I think it was like episode 4, we talked about dating white people and how a lot of people of color, especially a lot of black women, were saying that like white guys were just really ignorant. They were just really, really like racially ignorant. And it's almost as if they just didn't have a clue about like what was going on in this country. But then they were actively pursuing black women and saying like racist shit, you know? And so that's a perfect example of not knowing your demographic, not knowing your place, not knowing how you're going to be perceived. You know what I mean? So it helps to be aware. If you're shopping for a partner and if you're looking in the ethnic aisle, then know what you're shopping for. All right, Safi Sky. Ooh, that is a good line, by the way. Safi Sky. As an Asian man, how do you draw the line between someone being attracted to you / Asian man and the culture versus being fetishized? So, the line that I draw between a genuine interest versus a fetish, I think there's a number of things that you can do to define that line. I think like the frequency in which someone talks about certain things, like if they're like, it's okay to like lead in with K-pop and maybe use it as like an entry point, and maybe you're like genuinely interested in it, right? But like if you're always bringing it up, or if you're always like trying to bring me into it, like, oh, like, you look like that K-pop guy, or blah 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 blah. Like, I it's I could tell when people do that. Oftentimes, what it means is that they just don't know how to communicate with people. Like they have no idea how to like talk to people, and so they think that, oh, here's an Asian person. I don't really know what they're all about, but I do know that they're interested in K-pop. Let me go ahead and talk about that, because they think that that is a common denominator, but it isn't. It isn't always the case. Um, so yeah, I think it just depends on like how often they bring up race. How often it becomes a part of the discussion. How often it, you know. Um, Let me see. Um, Again, it's hard because You can be genuinely interested in a culture, like really, 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 really interested in another culture, and not cross that line into fetishization. Like you could be a a gay black blogger who writes about Asian food, and all you do is you go to Asian restaurants and you try them out and you review them and you cook them, and that is your thing. Like you're really, really, really into Asian culture, or like you're really, really into like a martial art, and like you've studied it and you're like a third degree black belt or whatever. Like that, I think is a, that I think it goes back into what we were saying earlier about interested is interesting, and like you can tell when someone is legitimately passionate about it and when someone is just adopting it as just sort of a thing. um, and I think like if you're interested in a particular if someone is interested in a particular Asian thing, but I see that they haven't really taken it that much farther, and like it's gosh, I know it's like, and sometimes I even like, well, I don't know actually, because I was gonna say like I also judge based off of like how many like pictures of K-pop people you have on your profile. But at the same time, I don't think that's necessarily. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't know. What do you all think? Like, if someone has a an album on their Facebook and it's like all pictures of a certain man of color, um, like, would you consider that to be a fetishization? Because on one hand, it's like, yeah, it's like it's kind of weird that it's all men of a certain color, and like you're just like, it's like those people, those women who have like profiles with K-pop dudes, and like their whole entire profile is just nothing but K-pop dudes, right? It's like on one hand, it's you can say that it's creepy. You can make an argument that it's creepy and that like, you're like objectifying them, blah 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 blah. But on the other hand, it's like, well, if you genuinely think that they're handsome, they're good looking, like there's no harm in that. So it's not necessarily like problematic, right? Um, so again, I think it just depends on the person. Like I've seen women who were into the whole K-pop thing, and they were cool about it. Like they they knew about Asian men outside of K-pop. You know, they knew about the issues that we had with our confidence and how we were racialized. Like that, and I think that is why I really was attracted to my wife, because she knew what was up. Like she dated Asian guys before, and like she's interested in anime and like video games and shit, but it was never like she made it seem like she was dating me because, oh, like you're Asian, oh, I'm interested in Asian stuff too. Like it was never like that. Um, let's see. Desiree said, "What? I missed that episode. I need to look at that. I need to look that up." I'll also say that if you are offended when someone tells you how you hurt them with your subtle microaggressive self-hate, over sexualizing, fetishizing, etc., listen. Instead of dropping your ass, they are checking you on your bullshit, and that is rare. Don't spin it on them. Oh, completely. I 100% agree. Um, oh, and you also made a comment. You said, it depends on how well you know them. You could visit their page in that moment, but over time they could be sharing posts about more than just one demographic. Facebook too will show you certain things based on who you are as well. So I don't know about that. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's like, who knows? Like, what if the K-pop folder is like the only one that's public, and there's a bunch of folders with like all these other men or whatever, Um, so like I said, it's tricky. I think it's just, I guess it's based off of how you feel. Like if you feel like someone is interested in your culture from a very topical level, like if like I always saw this with a lot of Asian guys in the AMBW groups. Like they would talk to black women, but like they felt like they could only talk about hip hop and shit like that, you know, and they couldn't. just talk about life, or I don't know, like shit that you're insecure about, or school, or whatever. Like, oh, I think when someone is reducing your experiences to certain racialized things, then yeah, like you're dating someone and like for some reason they only want to talk about anime or whatever, or, they only want to talk about how much they love your Asian eyes or whatever. Like I said, if you feel like parts of yourself are being ignored, then yeah. Avery says it becomes a fetish if a person overemphasizes their attention to a race. Yeah, yeah. I guess that's sort of just the simple definition. As long if they're obsessing about it, um, then yeah, it's a problem. I think the only thing, like I said before, that could get tricky is when you have people who are genuinely interested in a particular culture, because because we all know that sometimes people mix up certain cultures with a race. Like you'll have people who are really interested in like K-pop, right? But then people will call them like they'll say, "Oh, you have a Korean fetish." It's like, well, no, like actually, I'm married to a black person, but I just really like K-pop. So it's it's also tricky because different people will label certain things a fetish and other people won't. Um, Kimia said, Facebook algorithms show your common interest if you are not friends. Yes, they do. All right, let's go ahead and read a couple more questions. If you have questions, let me know. Nicole Winters, that is what I meant when I said it's about presentation, channeling a multifaceted identity in different ways to different audiences over substance, purposely trying to pretend you're something you aren't with the intent to mislead. Just trying to ensure I am not being misrepresented. English is not my first language. Not speaking correctly is an anxiety of mine. Oh, no problem, Nicole. I don't mean to misrepresent you at all. I'm just trying to clarify my point. Omi said, it's okay. People will have their opinions until they genuinely get to know you. Yeah, of course. All right. If anybody else doesn't have any questions, so it is 3:29. We are going to do lag live later on. All right, 9 o'clock. It's not 10 o'clock. It is 9 o'clock. We are doing an episode on what personality traits do you think make a man attractive? All right. Not talking about like, oh, he needs to be tall, he needs to be this, he needs to have money, or he needs to look like Jude Law. Like, none of that shit. Not to say that any of that's not important. If it's important to you, cool. But we're talking about personality and characteristics. All right. Avery, got a question? Let's go see what he is going to ask. Avery Darnell said, what is your opinion on racist people who date interracially? So I think there's a couple ways that you can read it. There are people who are racist and who will date interracially because like they've managed to segment their fucked up social and political beliefs, and they think that like, oh well, when you're in bed at night and the lights are off, like it doesn't matter. Like, how people are like that, where I guess weird, like they're super racist, but they will date other people. But I think the ones who are more concerning are the ones who are racist and they date interracially as a form of like racial conquest. Like the ones who are like, oh, I need to, I need to do one solid for the Asian team, so I need to go date these one people, or date black people or whatever, or white people who do this a lot, where they're like, oh, fucking Asians, fucking chinks, like I fucking hate Asian people, but they'll date Asian women, and then you'll see a lot of them do that because they have there's this sentiment of like a racialized, sexualized colonization where you feel like, oh well, if I can have sex with someone, then that means that I've like taken a point away from that ethnic group. And I wrote about it earlier. It's like they see it like a scoreboard and they think that they're taking, like they're shooting hoops in their basket every time they sleep with someone from another race. And like that, like it gets them off, like race play. And a lot of people who like will sleep around with the intent to like racially antagonize people, like that's that's a very big thing. Ebony Thomas said Logan Paul is the best example. Yeah, it is. Like, and again, you see this a lot with white guys. You see a lot with the white guys. White guys will talk about like, they'll talk about the superiority of, the white race, and they'll talk about like, oh, like I married a N-word, or I have kids and I have little like half chink babies. Like it's really disgusting, man. It is really, really disgusting. All right, everybody, that is it for today. I'm trying to do the Woke Fu podcast every day, or at least hopefully every day. I mean, this weekend I have a lot of stuff to do. I'm going to a conference in Atlanta, so I will probably be very, very, very busy. But yeah, I hope you are enjoying. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I will see you tonight. All right, 9:00. Remember, we're talking about the men's. We're talking about the men's, and you can join on camera. You can join on stream in front of everybody. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon. Love you.